Well, for the last few years, you and I, Nick, have been getting questions at least on a weekly basis from listeners of the website who are listeners of the website, readers of the website, listeners of this podcast, who are using this flash that we love and have used for many, many years. This is the Yongnuo YN-560, and the current version is 4. This is an inexpensive flash. $65 you can buy this flash. If you're looking for the link, just go to improvephotography.com and click on recommended gear. So it's a very inexpensive flash. And the reason that both of us love it is because it's really easy to use. It does everything that you really need from a flash in a very inexpensive unit. They're very durable. I have dropped and kicked and put these in water and have not had that many of them die on me over the last few years. I've probably owned 30 YN-560s because I like to have 6 or 7 of them for a complicated shoot where I have a lot of flash. And then I went from version 1, version 2, version 3. I really like these flashes. However, they're starting to get more complicated, and this new version 4 is definitely the most complicated one that they have made. And now that we're also adding these YN-560TX controllers, and so things are getting a little bit harder. Even with the YN-560s, even though I would consider these flashes easier to use than the Canon and Nikon. And somebody asked a question in the last episode of the podcast about they were having issues with the Fuji of getting it to work with the YN-560TX controller. That's what sends the signal out from the camera to fire the YN-560. And I didn't give a satisfactory answer on there. And we got a couple comments on that episode of people giving suggestions to that reader. And it reminded me of some of the things that I had kind of forgotten can trip you up as you're setting this up. So first, I want to point you to an article on improvephotography.com. It's just titled, "My Yongnuo YN-560 Flash Won't Fire." Help! And that's how it feels when this won't work. And I just kind of went step by step by step through how to do this. So in the new episode, as we're kind of changing how we're doing these shows, we want to share a new skill with you every time. So Nick, you've done lots of workshops and stuff. If somebody's flash won't fire, what are some of the first things that you're usually checking to see what's wrong?
Well, the first thing is to make sure that you have it in the right mode. So all speed lights have multiple modes. The YN-560s, they have an extra mode because they can actually operate as a transceiver or a receiver or manual, and then they also operate in slave mode. So you need to make sure that it's in the right mode. So if you're triggering it from, let's say, the triggering TX controller, you need to make sure that you have it in receiving mode, which is RX.
Which is totally tricky. Because you're using the TX controller, and then on the flash, it'll show TX, and you think, oh yeah, I want to use it with a TX controller. So you pick TX, and it won't work. TX means you're turning the flash into the controller. So one flash goes on top of the camera, and this is also going to trigger another flash that's off camera. So you don't want TX mode, you want it on RX mode as receive.
Exactly. And now, when you take that same flash and you put it on top of your camera, and then you want to do some bounce flash, now you have to remember to take it out of RX and put it into manual mode. Otherwise, it's not going to fire. So, and then let's say that you're wanting to use it in slave mode, you need to make sure that it's set to S1 or S2 if you're using TTL.
And for beginners, the slave mode, well, there are different types of what slave mode can be. But here we're talking about an optical slave. That means a flash just sits there and it does nothing. When it will take no signal from the controller. What will make the flash fire is if it sees a sudden pop of light in the room. That's what makes it go off. And so if you have another, flashes with multiple brands, like right now you own the Canon brand flash. I'm sorry if that's true. That's sad. They paid so much for it. But if you right now own a Canon or Nikon and you want to switch to a Yongnuo, then S1 mode is going to be great, your slave, because you can you can trigger your Yongnuo flashes with this normal trigger, and then you can set your Canon into optical flash. Then when all the others go off, poof, the other one will go as well. So that's a really handy mode.
And I really enjoy using that mode at weddings, because when other people go to take photos with their flash, my flashes ruin their photos.
That's true.
And so it means I'm the only one that gets good photos. And I just love seeing the confusion when they look down. They're like, it's all like Snow White, and they can't figure out why. I love that. But the most common way that I'm using them is I always have my transceiver, and then I have my flash set to RX. That way I can make sure that it's receiving. Now, the next most important thing is to make sure that it's in the right group and that the channel is correct. So you can change the channels, which are like 1 through 12, 16, whatever they are. And typically you're going to be in channel 1, and that doesn't change. But what does change is the group that you have it in. So you need to make sure that it's either in group A, group B, group C, or group D, E, F, whatever. You need to make sure that it's in the right group. Because that's how you can control the power of different sets of flashes, is by setting them to different groups. And then you can say, okay, group A that is over in this corner, I want to be at this power. And then group B that's over here in this corner, I want those to be at this different power. And you can control them all separately. So you need to make sure that you have the group set correctly. And that's really easy to miss sometimes.
Yeah, it is. And there are so many other things that can go wrong when you're setting your flash. So this is a tricky one. Each camera is going to do this a little bit differently. So I think one thing that helps is if you think about your flash as a macro. You know how a macro, like in Excel on a computer, how it's just remembering a series of steps and then it's doing them. That's how cameras work. Like when I press the shutter button, the camera says, okay, first you got to focus. Once it finds focus, then you're going to move the mirror out of the way. Once the mirror is fully out of the way, then you start moving the shutter. And part of that macro is going to be also send the electrical signal on the little contacts in your hot shoe and make the flash fire. Well, the problem is, as you have different camera settings, some of the camera manufacturers haven't sent that signal to the hot shoe. So on a lot of different cameras, when you're in live view mode, you can't take a flash picture. And so that's one thing to check. Some you can, but on a lot of cameras, it won't take a flash if you're in live view, or if you're in AI servo mode, or if you're in continuous focus, or if you're in continuous drive mode, like continuous high or continuous low. It's just different on different cameras. Usually Canon and Nikon are better at this than some of the third-party camera manufacturers. But be sure to check or quiet shutter. That's another one. When they added quiet shutter to the cameras, a lot of them would not fire the flash because it just hadn't been built into that macro yet. And some cameras, you aren't going to have to worry about these things for. But if you're having trouble with your flash, those are definitely things to check, because you may just have some strange setting going on in your camera that's preventing that signal from getting to the flash. So go to this article for sure. My Yongnuo YN-560 won't fire. It's on the homepage of improvephotography.com right now. And if you're having trouble, if you ever just kind of bookmark this one, because it'll walk you through step by step by step. And I think I've gone through everything possible that could go wrong there. So at the end of the article, if you follow the steps, either your flash is going to fire, or you're going to know something's wrong with your flash and you need to return it. But 99% of the time, there's nothing wrong with the flash. We just have some kind of setting wrong. So hopefully that'll help you get things going right.